Hey everyone, welcome to Soul Cafe. I think we have a great show for you tonight. So it's inauguration day, Aaron.
It is
Did did
January
you, did you
20th.
watch? I mean, what did you do?
I did, I watched it. I'm glad I actually logged on early because, I thought it wasn't supposed to start at noon. That was according to the official website, but it actually started earlier than that. So
No,
I
there was
I think
well,
that's
I mean, it depends on what you mean. There was all the going to church
well, there was, like,
stuff
the
and
going in, but the ceremony
all the
actually
going
started.
in and coming out.
Yeah.
Did the ceremony started before noon? Good.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
11:15, 11:20. It was
Oh,
early. It
yeah.
was I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm glad I caught this because I didn't think I was going to catch I wouldn't have had it on and otherwise." So, I thought it was wonderful. I mean, I always like the inauguration regardless of who it is that's being brought in.
Right. It's
It's a
history. Right.
yeah,
It's just what we
history.
do. So yeah, I watched it too, and really enjoy. It's different, not seeing the crowds and all that, but
Yeah,
you didn't know that when you were watching the ceremony itself. It was kind of
like the
cool,
state.
and all the former presidents and all that. I just think it's kind of cool. So we have a guest tonight who can give us some perspective on inauguration.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think so. He's one of our senior saints, but he was really involved in this early on, and when you and I were just children, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Nixon. What year did Nixon come in?
Well, I mean, the second
75?
inauguration was
I mean,
73,
73? I was not alive yet there.
69, 73.
Yeah, no, no, so
So Charlie was involved in the 73 one, the second
okay.
one, and then some after that. So, yeah, well, I was alive.
I was a twinkle in my parents' eye. The
Yeah,
following year,
I
I was
was alive.
there.
I was here. But anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, so how you doing?
All right. I'm coming to you guys live from my home office, which means bed. Recovery's still keeping me down, but otherwise I'm pretty good.
It's been worse than you thought.
It's been longer than I thought for sure. Yeah. It's just it's wearing me out, but it's more just I just want to feel normal again. But the price you pay, it's only been 4 weeks, so it's pretty
Yeah,
natural.
yeah,
Pretty
it's all
normal,
right.
they say. Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we have Aaron tonight. Is you think you'll sing some blues for me? Because here I am finally preaching about the blues, and now I just heard before he came on, his wife's telling him to sing something happier. So
Well,
it
I
makes
was
no
actually
sense.
hoping he was gonna maybe sing one of the songs from the inauguration, or like America the Beautiful, or maybe what's the song that always gets played
I
at,
don't think he has
President's
that
Day?
planned. I think he's got a different song, but we'll see.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's see what he's got for us. So we'll bring Aaron on and see what he can give to us tonight. So Aaron will sing a happy sad song.
A happy set.
Hey,
Yeah. Hey, Aaron. How are you, man?
I'm good. How are y'all?
I'm good. Did you watch the inauguration?
I did. I was trying to multitask. I was working while all the speeches and things were happening, so I
Yeah.
was not absorbing it very well. But it was definitely refreshing. Put it that way.
You gotta
Okay.
listen to the poem if you didn't listen to it, if you didn't haven't heard it yet. She
Oh,
was
it was
fantastic.
amazing. I did actually stop and just listen to her because, yeah, she was captivating.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
poem was
And
Nice,
the
awesome.
nice music for
the
sure.
benediction was also really great, I thought. It was
Yeah,
all
I
good.
thought I was like
That was
the
powerful.
Yeah.
whole Lady
Yeah.
Gaga thing and like who was the
J-Lo.
J Lo.
Garth
I
Brooks.
was
Garth
like,
Brooks.
"Really?" And Garth
Baby
Brooks,
Garth
I
Brooks.
know.
He was
Garth
so
Brooks,
great.
but they
He's
sang
my
really well.
favorite.
I was
Yeah.
surprised. It's like it wasn't like I don't know. I was thinking it would be like a football, kickoff kind of
Well, it was.
and stuff, but it
It,
was
it was,
better than
but it
that.
was a good one. It was a good
Yeah,
one.
yeah, it was a
So
good
yeah,
one. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. What do you got for us tonight?
Well, I was just telling Mandy, like I was flip flopping. I can't decide between these two songs. So Jim, I'm gonna let you decide. Okay. So I got two songs.
Blues, man. We're in the blues mood.
Okay. So the song that I feel like captures the day really well
Okay.
is a song from 1854,
Yeah.
Stephen Foster, called "Hard Times Come Again No More."
Oh yeah, baby.
So that's not blues. That's before the blues,
But
but
it's pre-blues blues.
it's pretty bluesy. But it's also hopeful and uh, a little bit joyful too, I'd say. The other one is a Norman Blake song called "Green Light on the Southern," which I love. It's a song that just like has the most detail about steam engines in trains and stuff like
Huh.
that. He's talking about because he grew up on a railroad line down in Alabama, and so he would watch the trains go by because that's what there was to do, and so he wrote the song about it.
So I don't know. I think we go historic tonight. What do you think, Aaron?
Yeah, I think the first one that I mean, I'd like
Yeah.
to hear, this, but the
I think
first
we
one.
go history tonight.
Yeah.
Do some
That's
history.
yeah, I think so. A little
Today was a
history.
historic day, right? So it seems
It's a historic day, so I think we go history.
okay. Okay. Let's do some history. So hard times come again no more. Let us pause in life's pleasures and count its many tears, while we all sub sorrow with the poor. There's a song that will linger forever in our ears. Oh, hard times come again no more. While we seek mirth and beauty and music light and gay, there are frail forms fading at the door. Though their voices are silent, their pleading looks will say, oh, hard times come again no more. 'Tis the song that sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. There's a pale sorrow maiden who toils her life away, with a worn heart whose better days are o'er. Though her voice would be merry, 'tis saying all the way, oh, hard times come again no more. 'Tis the song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. 'Tis the song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. Oh, hard times come again no more.
That's good piece, man. I like it. Yeah.
Isn't that
I like
good?
that.
Yeah, I mean that's been remade a dozen times, but it's a good one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe.
that's good.
Emmylou Harris was a very famous version of that. Many other really good.
Yes, she did.
Mhm.
Indeed. So
Uh,
next time you come though, it's going to be in my blues season. So if it's
I'm
next
working
week
on
or
it,
the week
man.
after, I need some real blues.
Real blues. I
People
know.
need to understand what the blues are. There you go.
Maybe not, but I'm I got my mind in that mode, and I'm looking. But this past week was just crazy for work, so I did not have a
Need
chance.
some
To,
time to
two new
figure
people
it
starting
out.
on my team this week, so it was very.
Now
Good.
that's a good. We're talking about history tonight, so that's a good historic tune. I like it.
Yeah, I
It's
like
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, man. Thanks for being on. Love you.
Love you
Take
too.
care.
Thanks for having me.
Aaron.
Take care.
All right, so I guess we will turn to our guest who, we usually have like sort of people who are doing stuff right now, but I think we've got people in our church who've done some amazing things, just
Yeah.
some senior saints. And this is one of them, one of my favorite people in the world, Charlie Mayhew. So Charlie, I got to tell you, Aaron, before he comes on, so he's watching. So I talked to him earlier this week and he said, can we fill 40 or 45 or now it's, 50 minutes? And I went, yeah, Charlie, I think you'd be surprised how this conversation goes. He said, I don't know. We can fill that much time. So he contacted me last night and said, I've got a briefing. Can we go overtime?
I love it.
So he's got more material
Yeah.
than
It
we
was
can
interesting. It was good
possibly
stuff.
include. So let's bring Charlie in and talk to him. So Charlie, right?
I do.
Okay, good. Glad. Oh, and there's Heather too. Heather's the tech specialist.
Yep.
So we've got to get him unmuted. She's helping him do that. And Heather, she's got a story or two too. So Heather, you should pop
hopefully
in
she'll tell
here.
us the story.
You're still muted. You're still muted, Charlie. We got to talk to you now. Get unmuted.
There you go.
There you go. Now we can hear you.
Well, good. Okay. Well, Heather has to save me every now and then, like all the time.
Everyone needs a tech specialist. I won't tell how she brings her iPhone to me all the time and such to tell her how to do stuff. But anyway, so Charlie, we're talking about inauguration, and so first of all, you've been a part of Columbia for a long time, and I think everybody knows Charlie and Heather Mayhew. I think so. Maybe somebody doesn't, but they need to. So, and the way you got into Columbia was by inauguration, but we'll talk about that later. So the first thing I want to know is, how in the world did you get started planning inaugurations? Did you, when you were my age or younger, you were younger actually. So did you say, you know what I want to do with my career is I want to plan inaugurations? Is that what happened?
Well, if that's what happened, it'd be like one of a kind in the world. Farthest from my imagination.
Yeah.
So how in the world did you get into this business?
Well, the Army sent me is really the answer to the thing. But we moved here in 1972, Heather and 2 kids. And very, very shortly thereafter, joined the Columbia Baptist Church. But my orders read that I was assigned to the Pentagon, and I think that was just the next level assignment. But they gave me an interim job to work on the Presidential Inaugural Committee. And so I was just assigned, and that's how I got started.
So that would be Nixon's 73 inauguration?
That was
Yeah,
Nixon's
I know
73.
that one.
And I would be, I was just a worker bee on there in a certain area and that type of thing. But it was an exciting thing to be involved in. There's nobody in the world will say no to anything that's required of anybody doing something on the inauguration, because everybody's just an upbeat, ready to go. How can I help? It's presidential. So
Yep.
that's sort of the attitude that most people take when they get involved.
So that was, had you watched inaugurations before 1973? Because I believe you marched in one at one point.
Well,
right?
yeah, I marched when I was a senior into Citadel in the band. We came to Washington in 73 for the Eisenhower inauguration.
Well, not 73, so that would be earlier than that.
63? No,
Six-
53. 63.
63.
Yeah.
Yeah, or 60 something. So anyway, you
Somewhere.
so you marched in Eisenhower, and then you got assigned to Nixon, and so you were just a worker bee in the Nixon inauguration. So what was that like? What stories do you remember from? I mean, that was his second inauguration, correct?
No, let me just say, when I came here, I had sort of an audit trail that finishes sort of my term here up into through now. But I basically worked on 3 inaugurations. I worked on Nixon's in 73 and Carter in 77 and Reagan in 81. I was a worker bee for the first one, and the second 2, I was the chief of staff that sort of oversaw the whole thing.
Wow.
So I think what people don't realize is most of the planning that happens for these is military.
Right.
Well, that's true. The way that it's organized is that the military has an Armed Forces Inaugural Committee by name, parallels the Presidential Inaugural Committee and the Congressional Inaugural Committee. There are 2 committees that we just parallel with because we provide operational control and logistics and all kind of support that you would never know about, or which they all need.
Right.
So they have ideas, and you guys make them happen.
Well, that's right. I'll never forget the second one, I guess. Anyway, the president appoints a head of the inaugural committee and say, okay, one of his favorite people, you're going to go run the inauguration. Well, if they told me that, I'd probably faint on the spot because it's a nightmare. Or if you know what's involved in it, you say, how in the world can I do that? Or how do I get there? So our job in the military, we were ready for it, you might say, because of past after action reports and planning and so forth. So we seek out that person just the day after they're appointed, and we invite them over and we tell them what we can do and kind of get them in line and say, we can do many things for you, but you have to ask us to do so. And so that got the ball started on how how the committee gets started. The civilian committee, the presidential inaugural committee, is a fun and games committee. And well, it is. And then
Yeah.
The congressional inaugural committee does the oath of office and
Right.
the inauguration at the Capitol. There's two committees and two distinct groups that we serve.
So
So-
they all wind up coming to you for help though, because
Oh,
they
yeah,
gotta
yeah.
they got to get things organized, and that's what the military does well.
Well, we have the assets and that type of thing. That's the difference. Things they need, and it was it was great all the way around. We really enjoyed doing things, but there's a lot of planning that has to go on. I started about a week after we got here, and in essence, almost a year ahead of time for the inauguration.
Right.
Planning starts, and the planning usually starts with the person in the job that I had as the chief of staff. We're usually the first people in the city of Washington who think inaugural early. So we make contacts with all of the other agencies that could be involved, DC government, park services, multitudes, and ask them to activate inaugural committees so they're prepared to furnish whatever they offer. Like in DC, of course, you're going to have the stands on the streets, and they do many things, but what comes to mind is stands on the streets and potties.
You got to have potties. Not today, maybe,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
most inaugurations you need a lot of those.
And you got huge crowds to control, and the policemen and all of that. There are multiple police forces, so it's just amazing and unbelievable to how many people are involved to make it happen from so many diverse agencies or different agencies.
So if you guys start planning a year out, I'm just curious, like what we saw this year, I'm sure being in the military, you're thinking of a couple of different scenarios that could adjust how you're planning. But how many are you? Because if a year out, you don't know which parties, which candidate's winning, and B, the state of affairs could completely change in the country as we saw this year. I'm just curious, how much of that would you have been already planned and scenarios have been built for, and how much are you scrambling at the last minute to make changes based on what's happening in the world?
Well, that's a real good question, but the answer is from a putting on the inaugural events, they're pretty standardized. They in recent years, recent inaugurals, quite a while back, we do the same things. There's always a parade. There's a swearing in ceremony, and all kind of other events that we plan for, and we know what we supported in the past, and we're prepared to do the same or adjust accordingly for similar type things that would be asked for.
So basically, you're planning the inauguration before you even know who's going to be inaugurated.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's intriguing. So, Charlie, you've learned inauguration's been a big part of your life. You didn't plan it, but it became that way, and you loved it. And you've learned a lot about the history of inauguration. So help us understand how all this started, because we see it, and you say the modern inauguration, but there are some things that have been true for all inaugurations. So, where did all this begin?
Well, I've got a few little points here from a historical standpoint, which I'll just call them bullets that might make the case. The inauguration started with George Washington. He was the first inaugural, and that's the 30th of April in 1989. and that was in New York City, which at that time was the
So that'd
capital.
be 1789, right?
17, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm always 100,000 off. Um, um, so that's where it was in New York City, and Washington walked over to the federal building to take the oath of office from wherever he was. There wasn't any much of celebrations or anything going on at that time, is my understanding. But there were crowds and helping him get over there with church bells ringing and ceremonial cannons shooting off and stuff like that. And when 12 o'clock came, he was taken up on the second floor front balcony with all the people out front and administered the oath of office.
So that's the piece that's been true since Washington. 12
That's-
o'clock on
Yep.
that day. Yeah, it's constitutionally appointed.
Yeah.
It's been happening every year since 1789.
Right, it's in the law. That evening, I guess there was parties and stuff like that, but what was said that Washington danced the minuet with his bride. So,
So that's the first inaugural, that's the first ball, right?
well, I guess you can call it that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. There are many facets to the inauguration in terms of what you do, but they evolved in time. They didn't all start up front. It started
Right.
with practically nothing.
Right.
Let me see. Another point, in 1801, Thomas Jefferson was the first person to be sworn in the capital of Washington, D.C. Prior to that, it was in Philadelphia or New York and so forth. But they brought it to Washington for the permanent home. And so Thomas Jefferson was the first one under the D.C. group. Let's see.
That was handy for him. He could spend the night before he could just spend in his own home.
Yeah.
On Jefferson's second inaugural, he rode his horse from the inaugural ending back to the White House.
Oh,
And-
by himself,
and
himself.
This is after it's over. And in doing so, he passed by the Navy Yard where there were workers cheering him on. And there was some musical, like the band, we'll say. And so these people started walking with the president back to the White House.
Oh, this is the beginning of the parade.
And that's the beginning. That's the
Cool.
beginning of parades.
Yeah.
And let's see. Well, there's so much history here, though. In the parades and other things, I've got a couple of notes here I want to look at.
Did they do a parade today? I don't know if
Yeah,
they
they
did.
did a parade, but it was a mile. It was a shortened
Yeah,
parade, like
well,
a mile and a half or something like that.
In all of the inaugurations, things got better and better and better until you see what you saw today, or even more so with people. Let me see here.
Heather
In,
wants to tell a story. She was with Jefferson in that parade, and she wants to tell a story about it.
in 1905, let's see, that's the Jefferson passing the Navy Yard.
Mhm.
The inauguration in 1809 was the first inaugural ball officially.
Officially.
1829, Andrew Jackson had a public White House reception. The note said that about 20,000 people came, and it was so
Wow.
crowded that he finally, the only way he could get out was to escape through a window.
So you
Wow.
know that's famous. That's pretty famous because he was a populist and he just opened the White House and it got crazy. And that's the last time we did that.
Yeah.
Smart.
And back in 1841, William Harrison, in his inauguration, that was the first time that a lot of political clubs and marching societies came to Washington to be part of the inauguration from then on. And so that brought outside people and all kind of bands or whatever they were doing.
So
At that-
Charlie, he caught a cold. It was a really cold day. He caught a cold at that inauguration, got
Yeah.
pneumonia, and he
Got
has the shortest tenure in presidential history as a result of that inauguration.
Hmm.
So inaugurations can be treacherous.
Yeah, that's right. One other thing too, in that particular time, that was the first time they introduced floats into the parade.
Oh.
Um,
I'd forgotten there was even floats in the parade.
Well, there weren't today.
Well, no. Well, I
No,
didn't even
not
see the
today.
parade. I didn't even know there was a parade today. So clear. I just watched the
There
ceremony.
was a parade. There was a parade, but it was military bands and a couple other things. That was all.
Were there bystanders?
No, I mean families and staffers and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
So floats. That's interesting, Charlie.
yeah, well, my picture's gone, so I don't know. But anyway, if you're hearing me,
We're hearing you.
In 1861, Lincoln's inaugural. He or his group brought Native Americans and African Americans for the first time in the parade.
Oh, That's cool.
And in 1917, women were introduced into the parade.
Well, I'm glad we finally got them there.
well, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so nice.
Oh me, so that's
Before we were able to
That's-
vote for the president, right? When did we get the right to vote?
So
I
I do
guess so.
think Charlie, it's pretty amazing that this is evolved, but it's been going on since the very beginning. I mean, I don't think there are many things you can talk about like this, and you were a part of something that had been going on since the time of Washington, which is incredible. And his second inaugural, well, actually, when he transferred to Adams, that inaugural was all the more amazing because people thought he would become the dictator, the king, whatever, and he passed it along. So the inauguration came to stand for this peaceful transition of power.
Hmm.
It came to be more than just the core. It wasn't a coronation; it was an inauguration, which is a really different thing.
Yeah.
So Charlie, you got involved in Nixon's second inaugural, and you were a gopher or a whatever you say you were at the first one, and then you started actually organizing these. So what were the second and third ones like? What's it like to sit in
well,
that chair?
I'll tell you very quickly how I got the job. Number one, I came here as a lieutenant colonel and with the hope of promotion, and then got diverted to this inaugural committee. And after the inaugural committee was over, you've got 4 years there. I went to the Pentagon to do, I will say, war duties, whatever. And I was promoted to colonel at that time. When it came time about a year in advance of the next inauguration, which was Carter, there must be 500 colonels they could interview, and they're all capable and this, that, and the other. So I thought to myself, how in this world could I at least get some attention and get my name somewhere? And so what I did, and it's just personal story, but ability is one thing, and who you know is another. That type of thing. So when I was in Vietnam, my suite mate, there were 3 officers that shared an apartment. My suite mate was another lieutenant colonel by the name of Kermit Johnson. And as the years from those those years of Vietnam came back up to the time I'm talking about. He was
You did
now
pretty well.
he was now a 2-star general and
Yeah.
the chaplain general of the Army.
Right.
So he sat up upstairs with the big boys. And so, being such a good friend, and I just mentioned to him it'd be nice if I could get my name advanced somewhere concerning the inauguration, because I did work on the other one and had some knowledge. And so, with Kermit Johnson's help and whatever many things that went along to make it happen, I got the job.
That's great.
And my friend Kermit Johnson passed a few months ago, and we're going to bury him in Arlington in April.
Wow.
That's just incidental.
No, it's not incidental. That's big.
That's big, yeah. So after the first inauguration, I worked in the Pentagon. Then I fiddled around and got this job of chief of staff to run the Armed Forces Inaugural Committee. And we took care of the Carter inauguration. And then there was another 4 years till the next inauguration. So I was privileged enough to become the commander of Fort Myer for the 3-year period. At the end of the 3 years at Fort Myer, it was time to gear up again a year in advance for the next inauguration, which would be Mr. Reagan's first one. And I didn't have to look around for anybody that time, since I'd already done it twice. I was asked if I would do it the third time. So you get there in different ways. It's quite exciting, but I will say on the third time, I wasn't as excited as I was the first 2 times.
But these are pretty interesting inaugurations. So you talk about Jimmy Carter, which was after Watergate, that was just a huge deal. And then Reagan's first inauguration, I just think that's pretty amazing. I think that's pretty incredible to be involved in. So I got a question, Charlie, because this is going to break your chain of thought, but this came in by text because we didn't put out a poll tonight. So one of our members has texted me and asked me, they said that they heard that Jimmy Carter wanted let me make sure I've got this right. No, it was Nixon in 73, wanted no pigeons on the parade route of the inaugural. So they want to know, did you have to do anything to get rid of pigeons?
Well, that's the first time I've heard that one, so I don't know. I guess I didn't.
Well, they know history, I guess. I mean,
yeah, well, it may be true, but whoever would take care of the pigeons would probably be up to the DC government.
so there are just so many strange things that people don't think about related to all these inaugurations, though, right? So, for example, Jimmy Carter, he made history by getting out of the car and walking the last mile. And now everybody does that. And I guess now I realize that Thomas Jefferson rode his horse. So there's history here. But for a long time, the car had gone all the way. Jimmy Carter got out. He wanted to be one of the people. And that had to be a real nightmare for those of you planning that thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, that's right. The Secret Service are the ones that have the biggest nightmare. And of course, rightly so. But they also have so much protection around that, it's better than not having anything at all. So it makes a great statement to the nation to be out walking as opposed to locked up in the car.
I remember when that happened. I mean, Erin doesn't, she's too young, but I remember watching Jimmy Carter and Rosalind walking that last mile, and it was a big deal. It was just a huge deal.
Was it planned, or did he just hop out of the car?
He might have planned it.
Well, nobody knew about it, but he planned it, or it wouldn't have happened. But he just probably told somebody, well, I'm going to get out and walk. And probably he told somebody, Secret Service, a day or two before, so they could get prepared.
Well, and today they were talking about how they entered the Capitol differently today in honor of, I guess, what happened last week, right? He took a different entrance than is normal. Did you guys pick up on that?
I didn't pick up on that, no, but I'm sure they did.
But he
The
did
women-
get out. He did get out and walk. It wasn't a mile,
Yeah.
just to be clear. It was about 2 blocks.
Yeah.
But
well, you
but
know,
everybody since Carter has gotten out and walked that last bit to the White House, and it's quite a picture.
Yeah.
So it's just probably one of many stories about these inaugurations that are just incredible.
well, there are a
So
lot of stories. You might like me to spend just a couple of minutes if we have time to tell you how the Armed Forces Inaugural Committee works to provide support to everybody.
well, yeah, tell us, because that was your thing. So tell us how that
Well,
worked.
from an organizational standpoint, I mentioned already we had the two committees, the Congressional and the Presidential Inaugural Committee. And the Presidential Inaugural Committee is the one you work with most, because that's where most of the work is. All of the agencies around town have subcommittees, as I've mentioned, and have people that are responsive to the needs of organizations. So you build a whole city of people that have committees that all get to know each other beforehand, and then have the right phone numbers so they can do business instantly when needed. From the Armed Forces Inaugural Committee standpoint, we were organized into many different subcommittees. I'll just mention a couple of three of them that were the more important. I think there were about 8 or 9 different committees. But one of the key ones was called the Military Aids Committee. It's like a military assistant or private assistant to a CEO. The job of the Military Aids Committee, and that's the job that I had on my first inauguration. The requirement is you go across all avenues in the inauguration. You learn what everybody's doing. But the main thing that the AIDS Committee does was to escort and take care of the VIPs to the inauguration. And the VIPs are whoever have been designated. But it's people like all the governors and families that come with them, all of the Supreme Court, all of the heads of the governments, congressional heads, and I don't know who else, a lot more. So each of these quote designated VIPs to the inauguration, and the inauguration could be a 10-day period. Now that's 5 days before and 5 days after. It's not just the ceremony.
Oh,
There's a whole lot going on beforehand.
So we're all missing out on a lot of fun. It sounds like
Yeah, oh yeah.
big parties and
yeah.
Well, anyway, so each of these each of these VIPs was given a field grade officer to a car and a driver, and that's necessary to get through traffic and get them to where they need to go and so forth during the inaugural period. And they pick them up at the hotel. They virtually live with them for the time they're here. They every need that they have that they can't handle themselves, and our resources assist.
that sounds like a good deal. Can I get that deal?
Yeah, that was pretty good. That was pretty good. Now, so in addition, that's a big deal in itself, even though that's just a small part of the inaugural committee, Armed Forces Inaugural Committee. Another committee was called a Transportation Committee. Now, of course, transportation means cars. All of the car companies, American car companies, send their best new cars over to the inauguration. We probably had a motor pool of over 100 brand new, fully loaded cars. In addition to a tremendous military fleet of just regular military cars used as taxi cabs for everybody that needed them in their planning sequences. So that in itself is a pretty massive thing. Is the control of the cars, the dispatching, the taxi service, and all that kind of thing.
Now, when that was over, could you get a good deal on a Lincoln, Charlie?
Well, no, they gave me a Cadillac.
Okay.
No,
That works.
they didn't give me anything. They loaned me what they loaned me one to use.
But you got accustomed to it.
Yeah, I did. That wasn't too. That's my thought here. Comes to mind. It's just offline here. On inauguration day, an hour before the parade, before the inauguration ceremony, um, we had the privilege of riding up and down Pennsylvania Avenue with my family and everybody, waving at everybody, having a good time because nobody knows who anybody is.
They think you're a dignitary.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and in that fancy car that they provided, and that was an awful lot of fun for the family too. Um, they have other committees. There's like a special effects committee, special event committee,
Mhm.
because there are so many activities that go on that require military support. Now, support isn't just a tent and a meal. The support is in most part musical,
Right.
because the services have a tremendous musical capability, um, with all their bands and so forth that are
Right.
stationed around. And there are things like teas and special luncheons and everything that start a week before the inauguration. And this is part of the political payback to the big money givers.
Yep.
I can give you one story that I thought was kind of neat. When I was in my first inaugural, well, it wasn't my third; it was the third inaugural. Anyway, this nice young couple came seeking some assistance, and when we found out what they wanted, they were given a tea to sponsor for the first lady on one of the afternoons before the inauguration, and they needed some help, some musical help, and whatever else, and a few other things. And so we worked very diligently through this one committee to give them what they want. The rest of the story is you never know who you're dealing with. Most of the people that we work with and all the workers on the inauguration, we're worker bees and what we'll just call average folks and relatively average incomes and so forth. And until you're exposed to what you might be calling Amazon level, you really know that there's a difference in the world. this young couple, about 35 years old, just as nice as fine as they could be. I'm telling you, they were just friendly as they could be, and actually we got to be good friends. They were very appreciative of whatever we wanted to do for them. One day the man asked me. He says, "My mother and father are coming to Washington to visit for the weekend. Um, could you talk to them and tell them about an inauguration? In other words, give them our standard 20-minute briefing on how we do business and so forth." So of course I did a lot of that, and so I brought them into the office and sat them down and briefed them and this, that, and the other. And when I got through, the older gentleman, the daddy, turned to his aide that he had brought with him that stayed with them, and he said, "How come we can't do that kind of stuff in our business? Why can't we be this efficient?" And he was just telling his assistant, that was his feeling out of
Right.
how we do business.
That's cool.
And
All right, so you got
So
to
I-
tell us who this was, because
It was
that's
just-
we're dying for the punchline. Who was this?
I'm not going to tell you who this was. In
Oh,
fact,
come on, come
I don't
on.
even know the name. But
But
here's
was a big business tycoon of some sort.
yeah, well, real big, but just ordinary folks like we're sitting here talking frankly.
Mhm.
And so I missed my choice because when he said, "How can we do something like this?"
You should
I
have said,
should have
"I'll do
raised,
it for you if you'll pay me
I
this."
should have raised my hand, but I didn't think about that until later. I could have had a job with this guy.
Right.
And
I'm
I
gonna
asked
tell you
him,
right now, Erin would have been all over that. She would have had
that's
that
right.
job.
I asked him, I said, by the way, I said, what business are you in? And all he said to me is, I make pipes and fittings. That's what he said. I make pipes and fittings. I think concrete pipes and fittings. Well, I come to find out that, he had a fleet of airplanes about as long as the runway, and really, really, really in big business, high level.
This is Danaher or something.
Well,
So,
I don't know who in the world it would be.
so
But his children, they came, they worked on the inauguration for a couple of months beforehand, getting their tea ready and so forth. They lived right across from the White House in one of those fancy hotels.
well, there you go. So Charlie, this is the thing. So you love doing this. It was a big deal, and I think you got to know one of my predecessors, Neil Jones and Betty Jones. You got to know them at at an inaugural ball, right?
Well, that's right. My dear friend Neil and Betty, and of course many people if from the church that are in the over 50 age, you probably know Neil from
Over
his
50.
time.
No, it has to be
60.
over. It's over that now.
Is that right? Well,
Yeah.
whatever it is.
It's way over that now.
Well,
Neil,
we Heather and I were assigned to one of the inaugural dances at one in downtown, and I was all dressed up, of course, and our mission was to, I use the term, stand around the wall and be a potted plant. In other words, look good and there's a military uniform, it's colorful and all this, that, and the other. The real reason that we were there was to take care of any problems that that developed, like somebody gets sick or whatever. And so it was a two-pronged attack. We enjoyed the dance and mulling around and added color to the operation, I guess. Well, anyway, during one of the while we were out in the hall somewhere, I ran into Neil and Betty Jones just standing up on the wall, and of course I knew them, but we hadn't been at the church but not very long, and so we started talking, and we found out that they didn't know anybody there, and I said, well, we don't know anybody here either. And so, and I think that's true for most people.
Yeah.
yeah, at balls, I bet that's true for almost everybody.
Except the entourage they bring with them. But we talked for about 4 hours and so forth, and 3 hours, and we just had a great time, and got to know each other, and talked about church business and families and everything else, and we became very, very close to that family for
Yeah.
till now.
Well, of course, great. Neil's a great guy. He's 96 now. And so actually it's people about over 70 that remember Neil, but those were good days in the life of Columbia, and that's incredible. All right. So we're going to run out of time. And before we run out of time, you have to tell, you've got some pretty good stories about people that Heather got autographs from, talked to, people you met at inauguration. So what about famous people at inaugurations, like especially old Blue Eyes? I want to hear that story.
Well, Blue Eyes, you mean? Oh, okay. Blue Eyes. Yeah, I know Frank Sinatra.
She remembers.
she remembered.
Heather, why don't you tell the story? Come in here and tell me about Frank Sinatra.
She can't do it. There's two stories there. Heather's basic story is that we were at one of the functions with all the Hollywood stars that came to put on the shows, and so Heather decided that she had to have an autograph of all these people, and so I told her, well, there's no way in the world I'm going to go up with you to get autographs. So I stood over there in the corner, and she says, well, I'm going. And so she went over there and started collecting autographs from Van Cliburn.
Anybody who knows Heather, this is not hard to imagine.
Yeah, and so finally she collected several autographs, and then she got down to Bob Hope, and she was standing there with Bob Hope, and he was signing autographs for a couple of people, and he said, "Thank you, and this is all I'm going to do." And Heather's standing there, and she says, "Oh, Mr. Hope, please one more," and so he signed hers, and so that's Heather's story.
I
But
love that.
I wasn't going to get involved in that and be seen around asking for autographs
So,
in that
so Frank
in my
Sinatra
uniform.
though,
I might have asked for it if I was in
Frank
some other.
Sinatra was a big character in one of your
Yeah,
inaugurations, and you met him, right?
yeah, right. And Frank Sinatra. What we did with him is he wanted. We put military aides with him to be escorts, and he was in charge of all the inaugural entertainment anyway. So he drove up in a couple of long limousines, and we put our government cars to rest. And we gave him the question was, here comes this man. We're going to get the right kind of guys to be his aides. So we looked at all the 80 or 90 aides that we had down there. We picked out two of the most handsome ones we could find, and it seemed to be the most sociable kind. And we assigned them. We assigned them over to be with that party the whole time. Uh, the issue came up beforehand, sort of behind the scenes, is that there was some thoughts around that Frank Sinatra had some kind of a dark side to him too, and people might not be sure how he would respond and so forth. So there was a little discussion that went on between the general and myself and a few others, and say, well, what do we do? What are you guys going to do? And the head general popped up and he said, just use your best judgment, and whatever happens, deal with it, and I'll back you. And that was it.
That's good.
That was it. So, but the two lieutenant colonels that we assigned came back, and they had nothing but raves of glory and beauty. I mean, they said they had the best time of their life, and that Sinatra family, all of them were there, just so gracious to them and took them under like they were family members during the whole time, and that's the way it ended with them.
So you
I
know,
can,
President Trump played "I Did It My Way" as he flew out today, so that all came back around.
yeah. I might mention one other thing. Yeah, you just tell me to be quiet on time. I know you're short.
We got
Uh,
7 minutes. You're good.
okay. Frank Sinatra, being in charge of the entertainment, he sent his head lawyer, his personal lawyer, and it's a musical business lawyer.
Right.
He sent it to be his representative up there during the whole planning session. Of course, we dealt with him frequently, but basically his job was to marry up the military free entertainment with the entertainment that you have to buy, orchestras or what have you, for the dances.
Mm-hmm.
And so there had to be a lot of equity and discussions and figure out how all that does. But I'll never forget though. Behind his desk was a red phone. That's a painted red phone, as opposed to the old black phones.
Right.
And so he was a kind of a I guess he was a Jewish fella that spoke like you would get somebody from New York, only he was from California. He had and he had a big cigar that he smoked, and pretty heavy hitting guy, but also a very nice guy. Well, as we were talking one day, all of a sudden the phone rang, that red phone rang, and the light on it popped up.
Fat phone.
He dropped his cigar out of his mouth. He wheeled that desk around and said, "Yeah, Frank." That was the hello.
So Frank has the red phone.
No, he had the red phone too, Frank.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Frank had the red phone to him.
My
Yeah.
goodness.
But
that's
anyway,
hilarious.
I was very impressed with that. He was
That is funny.
responsive to his boss.
Yeah. So do when you bring those entertainers in, I was wondering as I was watching today, are there days that you're organizing the rehearsals? So between because the military band plays while the famous artist like today
Well,
sings.
those
They have
those
rehearsals?
those required. Well, I don't know. They kind of handle that themselves, and they get the job, and then they get
Okay,
together. So yes, that had to be certainly rehearsed. I don't see how the military would have gotten through the thing, but it would
sure.
not have been good without rehearsal.
So you all just knew who was going to do it, and then they would organize their own rehearsals and things like that.
Yeah, we
Your
we
team.
turned the project over to the Army band
Right.
commander or whoever,
Yeah.
and he would coordinate whatever's necessary there.
Yeah.
And
So Charlie,
it
was this fun?
was just fun,
Yeah.
loads of fun.
So
Well,
did you
I'll
when it
tell
was
you
all
this.
over, did you feel a letdown or were you glad it was done well? And I mean, how do you feel when you do something like this?
Well, the immediacy after the inauguration is the next day is there's nothing there. You know,
Mhm.
we trained somewhere between 10 and 11,000 military or civilian military civil servants from the services to do something on the street
Right.
during the inauguration time. It's a massive, massive undertaking, and the spans of what we did is kind of mind-boggling. We not only we had doctors, we had health stations at almost every intersection on the parade to take care of anybody that might have fainted or have a problem. We had veterinarians because it was horses. We had the logistics committee that had to find billets for 5,000 soldiers that had to be brought in to do this, that, and the other, and feed them. And there's just no end to the vastness of
Right.
what's happening.
It's huge. I mean, my former career was event planning, and I thought some of my undertakings were big, but nothing like that. We did do an inaugural ball. We did. Cyril and I did produce an inaugural ball, but that was as close as we got to the action, and it was not as nearly as exciting as your stories. It's
And,
a huge undertaking.
and
So,
I'm just thinking back here is that how I got into this business and got these orders that got to this first inauguration. Somebody had to look in my record to have a record pick to see who they were going to send to do the job I had, which was be a worker bee.
Hmm.
And on my record, it said in Vietnam, one of my jobs was to manage and run 25 officers and NCO clubs. So
so
that
you
was
were you were a detail guy. That's what you were, a great detail guy. And I've known you for 18 years now plus, and you are a tremendous servant and a great detail guy. And I can see how you would do this really well. So here's your closing question. So when I watch an inauguration, I'm just taking it in. So now, after having done those three, when you watch an inauguration, I bet you don't watch it like we do. I bet you're thinking about all that has to happen. And what do you think when you watch an inauguration today?
well. In watching this today, I was looking at it with a critical eye because every every the swearing in ceremony, if you noticed up on the stage, there were quite a few military people.
Yeah,
Hmm.
there
And
were.
they're there because of either they were an usher or they was an escort that had to take care of the VIPs. But the military controls what's happening there. There was a microphone in the back with a big deep voice on it that says, "Ladies and gentlemen, stand or be seated," and stuff like that. That's the control type of thing that the military makes it happen. And then everything goes around the timing, the control of when the president enters and so forth. And then the order they enter and the order they go out and all of that requires intense
Protocol.
planning.
That's
Yeah.
all military.
Yeah, it's all military.
Yeah. Well, Charlie, you and Heather, just two of my all-time favorite parishioners. I love you. I love you both, and it's so much fun to hear you talk about this. I gotta tell you the truth that for Aaron and even for me, it sounds like a look back in time. It's just amazing to think, but to think that this has been going on since George Washington, it really is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
That this has happened in some unbroken stride. This transition of power. And I think it's a remarkable day. Even if it's not your candidate, it's a remarkable day. And I think it's just an amazing moment. So I want to thank you for being on with us tonight. And next time there's an inauguration, I might watch it with you, and you can give me commentary.
Well, by that time, I may be looking down on you, but okay, brother.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I've
Thank you,
enjoyed
Charlie.
trading
We
with you
we
guys.
love you so much. Take care,
you.
Aaron.
Right.
Love you.
Bye-bye.
Good. Love you too. Even though you don't
Love
bring
you.
near that much energy, but we'll talk to you soon. Love you both. Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye, everybody. We'll see you next time on Soul Cafe.